Okay, we are now live streamed, so welcome everybody who is not able to join us in the moment for Lunch and Learn. It's good to have you with us now or whenever it is that you're watching us. Let's begin our learning together with the blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. It's such a wonderful bracha, blessing, that one, because it ends la'asok b'divrei Torah. May we as Jews be engaged in the study of Torah. La'asok actually means to engage in, or for it to be the business of our lives. So as busy as we are with all the other things that are going on in our lives, the bracha is actually stating that somewhere in the busyness of our life should be the busyness of engaging in the study of Torah, which you all do regularly because you're always here for Lunch and Learn. So that's wonderful. We're continuing to study with Rabbi Erin Smokler from IJS, and we're using her text again today with a few other additions. And one of those additions is this beautiful wait, I just want to, make a full screen song by Yosef Kardanur, which I'm going to share with you right now. So I'm going to share my screen, share sound. Okay, hold on. Can everybody see the screen? It's all in blue with clouds. Do you see all that?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a look at the words first. Katuv b'Torah hakdusha v'anochi hester aster panai b'yom hahu aval Rabbi Nachman masbir va'afilu b'hastara batoch hastara b'vadai gam sham milubash Hashem yitbarach. Gam achorai advarim ha'kshim ha'ovrim elecha ani omed. So it is written in the Holy Torah, right? Katuv b'Torah hakdosha. I will certainly hide my face in that day. That's from Deuteronomy. But Rabbi Nachman explains, even in a concealment, within a concealment, the Lord may be blessed is certainly there. Even though the hard times that befall you, I stand with you. Okay, so that's the song. I want to ask you, when you listen to it, tell me what you think about it, and tell me what you think the song means as we finish the song. So I'm going to start it now, and then after you listen to it, I want to go back and I want you to think about what did it mean for you. So here we go.
כתוב בתורה הקדושה אנוכי אסתיר פניי ביום ההוא ביום ההוא ביום ההוא אבל רבי נחמן מסביר ואפילו בהסתרה שבתוך ההסתרה בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך ואפילו בהסתרה שבתוך ההסתרה בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך ואפילו בהסתרה שבתוך ההסתרה בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך ואפילו בהסתרה שבתוך ההסתרה בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך. אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד.
ואפילו בהסתרה.
Okay. Yeah, then you have the beautiful children's choir that continues singing the same words repeated, but you get the idea. So tell me, what are your thoughts? Judy and George. Judy first and then George.
Number one, they emphasize the last line by repeating it a lot. And I mean, I think for me, that's the most important line. And I'm a little Amelia Bedelia about the line, I will certainly hide my face in that day. I look at things too literally sometimes, and I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, so we're going to open that question up. What do you think, all of you? Does it mean that God says that God's going to hide his face? What does it mean for God to hide his face? Good question. Let's hold on that. I want you to answer, but first, George, go ahead. Your thoughts?
Yeah, two things. Well, first of all, when the verb is repeated in this form, the absolute infinitive and then the verb, that means really emphasize.
Hester, Esther.
Yeah, I will really do this. But then we talk about the day, not about the people, which is unusual. In other words, Asher Asa, that it did, the day, not the people. If he said, boy, I'm really going to punish these people, they're terrible. I mean, that's one thing, but I don't know if it's just by saying a day, it might refer to a specific part of time, not forever.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Marilyn.
Yes. First of all, the line, I will certainly hide my face in that day. I interpret that as that the person or people don't see God in a very, when they're going through troubled times, it's hard to find God. Yeah, it's not that God will hide his face. We interpret it that God's not there. So that's how I interpret it. And also, this whole thing brings up the Holocaust to me. This is this must have been a true test to people that, really were Torah learned. I can imagine that this part really would come up a lot, to try to find God in those circumstances.
Great. Thank you. Leora.
I want to say that there are so many miracles every day in our lives. We're just not aware of them. So for me, it's like God is always hovering. The fact that I don't see the miracle doesn't mean they don't exist.
Great. Wonderful. Any other thoughts? Judy, will you repeat your question one more time?
I was not exactly sure what that line meant. I thought it meant that even though we can't see God, he's always there, but I wasn't sure.
Okay, so does Leora's response help make sense of that line?
Actually, hers and Marilyn's really helped me a lot.
Great. Okay. We'll listen for the latecomers. Just one more bit of the song, and then we'll go to our text today.
שבתוך הסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך, ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך הסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך.
Okay. Why did I share this with you today? First of all, I love the song. I think Yosef Kardanor is an amazing Israeli artist, and the words, I think, are incredibly powerful, right? That while it's true, there are so many times in our lives individually, collectively as a Jewish people, that we may feel God's absence, that God's face is hidden from us. The reality, at least according to Reb Nachman, is it is within the hiddenness, that hiddenness of God, that actually God's presence is there. Within the concealment, the challenge is to be able to experience the presence of God, because as it says, even in the hard times, God says, I am with you, even if you can't feel me and even if you can't see me. And that's going to very much relate to the topic that we are going to be discussing today. Jennifer and then Jill.
Oh, and thank you. It is a beautiful, lovely recording, and great to see everyone hugs me. So I was also thinking that God hiding his face, we can say, you know, we can't see him somehow, or we feel he's not there. But the other thing could be, another added interpretation could be that he's hiding his face because he's hiding his face because it pains him. It pains him. He's still there. He's still going to do everything he can, but he doesn't want to look. And in a way, not looking, it makes it even worse sometimes. I'm thinking of the brilliant filmmaker Steven Spielberg, you know, who sometimes when he leaves things up to your imagination, it's far worse and far more moving than if he actually were to give you the image live. So,
what a very nice interpretation. Thank you. Jill.
So, hi, Rabbi and group. Happy Hanukkah. Excuse me for seeming to be late every time. I end at 12 with my client, and then I have to get in here. So I'm sorry if I missed anything important, but I'm sure I missed something important. But it seems to me like the whole Holocaust thing, that it's so hard to imagine or to feel God's presence when we are in those hard times, or especially when you look at the Holocaust. And it makes me surmise that God is there, but can't do anything about and can't intervene in our lives. And I think that's a hard concept, or at least it is, you know, I have a real, it's not a dichotomy. What is it? What's the word I want? Challenge, I guess, in believing that there's a God and realizing that he's not omnipotent. Maybe he's omnipresent, but he's not omnipotent.
Good. So you actually raised the issue of what today's Torah discussion is going to be about, is how can we, might we find, feel, experience the presence of God in moments of great darkness, sadness, and loss. That's exactly the theme that we're going to talk about. So Judy, Marilyn, and Lauren, last comments, and then we'll jump to the texts for today.
Well, as we are made in God's image, I also feel that when things are really looking bleak, it's hard to not feel totally alone from people as well as from God. And even though you know they're there and being supportive and everything.
Good. So not only is it difficult sometimes to find God, but even the face of God in the expression of a human being in front of us, it's hard to connect to that person when we are in a place of darkness, of depression, of loss. Even another human being, sometimes it's hard to help them pull us out of that space. Great. Marilyn and then Lauren.
And throw free will into the mix too. You know, we have free will, but our oppressors also have free will. And that's the conflict. You know, why doesn't God step in and smite those SOBs dead, you know, and uphold the righteous? I mean, that's the difficulty.
It is difficult. It's an important conversation to have. It's not one that we're going to have today, which is a question of theodicy. Where is God? Why isn't God? How could we imagine God in that place? But it really is an important question to consider for sure. Lauren.
Okay, so I don't know if this makes sense, and maybe in the Hebrew it was clearer, but when I read, I hide my face, or the face was hidden, I was thinking of the person was hiding their face, like maybe I didn't want to see God, so I was hiding my face from God. That's how I was reading it.
That's nice. So that's a beautiful read, Lauren. The text itself, here it is. Again, I wrote it out for you, right? In the Torah, it says, and I will certainly hide my face. The pshat, the simple reading is God is saying that to the people of Israel, but it's an interesting way in which you're reading it and certainly can be drashically understood in that way. And that adds a whole other layer of meaning behind this text. So with the discussion that we just had in mind, Hannah Arendt, who was not an easy writer to read for those of you who have studied her and read her books, she writes in this passage of Men in Dark Times, if it is, wait, hold on, just adding more people to the class. If it is the function of the public realm to throw light on the affairs of men by providing a space of appearances in which they can show in deed and word, for better and worse, who they are and what they can do, then darkness has come when this light is extinguished by credibility gaps and invisible government, by speech that does not disclose what it is, but sweeps it under the carpet, by exhortations, moral and otherwise, that under the pretext of upholding old truths, degrade all truths to meaningless triviality. It is unbelievable that she wrote this, 60 years ago, I think, and it's as if it could have been written today. Like, it is amazing to me how history repeats itself. Light is that which is supposed to provide the ability for us to see one another and the truths that exist in this world, and to trust in the public sphere, in government and one another. And darkness, therefore, is the opposite. And it sometimes feels, not just through this pandemic, but through the last many years, that we are certainly living in that kind of darkness today in our world, right? The fear that we have whenever we read the newspaper or listen to the news or listen to social media, is the world is spinning around us. And, Arendt's depiction of light and dark is really the experience that we are feeling right now, being in this place of darkness. So what do we do with that? Well, one solution is where we started.
Yeah.
Right? That even when God hides God's face, even in a concealment, within a concealment, the Lord is there. Even through the hard times, God is with us. So, of course, that's the beautiful, powerful, religious, Hasidic, Jewish understanding that even within the darkness, there is light, but it's deeply hidden and concealed. And that really is the experience that the Sfat Emet wants us to engage in and think about around the holiday of Hanukkah. Because Hanukkah is a unique holiday. Hanukkah celebrates something very different than the other holidays that we celebrate God's miraculousness in saving the Jewish people. And I want us to dig a little deeper as we move on into how it is that Hanukkah is different than these other holidays. But before we do that, go ahead, George.
Yeah, well, one of the things, the theme of Hanukkah is a little bit of light can illuminate a lot of darkness. That's why you're supposed to put this in a public display, by a window or something to illuminate the darkness. So that's the theme that I've read about.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And hopefully we're gonna see that as we continue with the text. Carrie, you asked a question in the chat. The text itself, the page of the, I'm happy to share with you. In terms of the interpretations, there's nothing written that I can give you other than whatever it is that I share with you in the moment of this class. I don't have, texts that are written that describe the interpretations. I'm just offering them in the moment of the discussion. But I will be happy to send you the text. Just send me an email after class to remind me, because I'm bound to forget in the middle of the class. Okay, so let's take a look at the Sfat Emet. The miracle of Hanukkah was in the light, as George just said.
Yeah.
That one could find the illumination hidden in the darkness and the exile. Okay, so that sentence is a very important sentence because he's saying something about the nature of the redemption.
Yeah.
The redemption of Hanukkah takes place where?
It's in Israel. In Israel.
It's in Israel.
Or Purim is outside of Israel.
Okay. So George, if the redemption of Hanukkah takes place in Israel,
right,
why then does Sfat Emet say in this first sentence that it's in the exile? The miracle of Hanukkah was in the light that one could find the illumination hidden in the darkness and the exile.
And the exile, not in the exile.
Well, yeah, and the exile, meaning it makes no sense. He's writing about an experience that happened not in exile, but actually in a moment when the Maccabees rededicated the temple. So why does the Sfat Emet read the story of Hanukkah as one that takes place during the exile and still in darkness?
He's not in Israel, so he's got to come up with something to show a meaning here. No?
I read it very differently, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I read it as the light illuminates into the exile, that it happened in Israel, but the light shined throughout the exile.
So meaning that what happened in Hanukkah, the story, thousands of years ago, is supposed to sustain us even in moments of darkness today. That's asking an awful lot, though, isn't it? To say that the Maccabean victory should help those Jews living in times of great darkness. which I think you're right. I think is one of the ways in which he reads this text.
I
That-
wasn't even meaning that exactly. I mean, I think that's a beautiful reading. I love that reading, but I was reading it as that even at the time of the miracle of Hanukkah, that one could find that illumination outside of Israel.
Got it. In other words, that the light was so great in the rededication of the temple and the victory by the Jews over the Assyrian Greeks, that light cast a very wide shadow, or
Yes.
destroyed the shadow
That's
all
more
over.
how I'm reading it. Yeah.
Got it. Great. Okay. Jennifer and then Ruth Ann.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I was thinking, perhaps if we just read a few sentences further deeper into this paragraph, that the idea that even though they are technically in a kind of exile under the thumb of their attackers, the real freedom is the belief in God and his rescuing them, that he's the ultimate source of freedom and redemption. Doesn't matter who's surrounding you.
Okay. So regardless of the circumstances that we're in, if we have faith that God is present, we can feel that sense of redemptive power.
He's the one that, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
the article says it, the clip says it better.
Okay, we're going to read it in a sec. Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann, you're muted.
In the depths of the Holocaust, I mean, where was God totally concealed? But then from that, you have not, well, directly, indirectly, the creation of Israel.
So out of tragedy might come light and blessing.
It's hard to, fathom it, but it's it happened. Yeah, is that related to all of this?
Absolutely. Let's keep going and try to further clarify. And on this matter, let us turn to what my master, my grandfather, my teacher, my rabbi of blessed memory, Rabbi Yitzhak Meir Alter, said on the Talmudic statement in Tractate Megillah regarding Purim, that we do not recite the Hallel during the holiday of Purim, for we are still slaves to Achashverosh. Let me give you a quick aside. So Hallel is a series of psalms that are recited on certain holidays. Hanukkah, one of them, Sukkot, Pesach, not Purim. And the question is, why do we recite Hallel on certain holidays, but not on Purim, when Purim, similarly to Hanukkah, is a holiday that celebrates the victory of the Jews over the enemy? And according to the Talmudic reading, we don't recite Hallel on Purim because even though Mordechai and Esther were able to destroy Haman, the Jews were still living in exile. They were still living under the rule of Achashverosh. They were not a free people in their land, and therefore the redemption wasn't complete. And because the redemption wasn't complete, Hallel is not recited. Whereas on Hanukkah, as George said, the redemption took place in the land of Israel. The Jews regained their sovereignty, or they had their sovereignty from the first place. They were able to throw off the Syrian Greeks and recapture the temple, and therefore Hallel is recited. But, there's a big but, and he continues. So too, regarding this miracle of Hanukkah, there was no full release or nullification of Greek sovereignty. So even though Jews were able to be victorious over Antiochus and rededicate the temple, Jews still were bound by the Seleucidic rulers. They did not have complete control. They were able to control some of their own destiny, but they were within the realm of the Greek Empire and therefore didn't have complete and total control. So it, like Purim, is not a complete redemption. But then we have to ask the question, if that's the case, why is it that we recite Hallel every day of Hanukkah, but not on Purim? So the answer is because Hanukkah gives us a different feel in terms of what we're celebrating. Is everybody with me so far in that explanation? Okay, so let's keep going a little bit further. It seems to me that on account of the miracle, the Jews felt that they were servants of God, even though they were still in exile or unredeemed. So the reason we recite Hallel on Hanukkah, the reason that Hanukkah, right, is a holiday of light, is because the Jews felt, even though they did not have complete and total freedom, they still felt that they were acting with their own power. They were servants of God. And this itself was the miracle, that they could be servants of God in exile in the midst of darkness. This remained for generations, the ability to experience something otherworldly even in this world. So let's pause there. What is he teaching us here? What is he saying about what is he saying about what was unique about the Jews at the time, or the unique aspect of what Hanukkah is supposed to do for us, particularly as it relates to this passage of Hannah Arendt, or more specifically, the song by Joseph Cardenor. Any thoughts to that? Marilyn, is that your hand raised?
That even that we can still act as or be as if we were servants of God in whatever time frame we are in, whether it's in exile or in times of great strife. That the Hanukkah, the light for 8 days, it illuminates us in the present or in any time. We can still be servants of God.
Good. So in other words, it's not about the physical. It's not about experiencing physical freedom.
Right.
It is about experiencing internal.
Spiritual. Yeah.
It's about how we internalize our outward, external experiences in our life. Excellent, Marilyn. Thank you. Ellen, and then Jennifer.
Well, you just touched on what I was going to say, that we carry the light within us. It does not have to be a physical candle. And that it's our job to bring that light to the politics of the day, whatever day it is and wherever we are, and to bring out the best in the humans around us, the best that we can, wherever we are.
So one little candle that we light in a vast darkness is just that, a little bit of light in that vast darkness. Great. Jennifer.
Yes, and that touches on the end of that section, that in each of those individual candles is at the same time the totality of all.
Mm.
And the other thing that I forgive me if I'm wrong, the idea that one aspect of the miracle is our capacity to revitalize city, continue to believe God comes from that not there, that he exists in this that's the miracle, that we can actually create him within ourselves.
Great. Okay. You cut out a little bit there, but I think the ending is really significant of what you said. The miracle that we are celebrating on Hanukkah is not the miracle of the Hasmonean victory over the Greeks. That's not the miracle. The miracle is the ability for the human spirit to feel light and see light and experience God even in the face of dark. That is in and of itself the miracle. Marilyn.
I was thinking about how powerful that is, because we're supposed to carry with us the Torah and the mitzvot, and it's on the same, maybe not on the same level, but way up there. We carry this light with us too. So the miracle of Hanukkah is really a miracle.
Well, so that's nice, because that takes us back to right here. Even in the concealment within a concealment, the Lord, may he be blessed, is certainly there. On first reading that, it's easy to read that as God has concealed God's self from this earth, from the world in which we live, and it's hard for us to find that face of God. But Marilyn's reading, and I think Ellen's reading, was no. God is concealed within us, deep within us. And yet, even in the concealment within us, we have the ability to shine the light on the hiddenness of God. And that is an act of miraculousness. When we can do that, when we are feeling so dark, we can still in that moment find the light. And that is a miracle when that happens. He concludes, this remained for generations the ability to experience something otherworldly even in this world. Regarding the phrase in the song Ma'ot Tzor, which I added one paragraph here, men of insight, days 8, Yemei Shmona, established the song for jubilation. It seems, in my humble opinion, that it should have said 8 days, Shmona Yamim. It must mean that those days were established in the aspect of eightness, otherworldliness. Every day of the 8 contains the aspect of eightness. It's a little bit of a Kabbalistic statement, what he's making, which is basically that 7 days God created the world. That's the physical aspect of the world in which we know. The 8th day is the metaphysical. And that comes about in our ability to experience the godliness that exists in this world. So I think Rabbi Smokler does a beautiful job of articulating what it is that he's trying to say. In full awareness of the lack of full redemption, right? That's this quote here. Where was it? Right, there was no full release or nullification of Greek sovereignty. So in full awareness of the lack of full redemption, Jews still declared Nes Gadol Haya Po. A great miracle happened here. One small cruse of oil, one battle won, that was Gadol. That was big. Just hang there for a minute. When we're in a place of darkness, the first battle that we achieve is one that may be one small step. Not a final step, but an initial step, a first step. Like if you have experienced in your life a terrible loss, a devastating loss, one that crushes you, in that moment you cannot imagine how you can move beyond that devastating loss. And The goal is not to imagine how to move beyond that devastating loss. The goal is to take a single step. Because if you can take a single step, that is the path that leads you into greater light. The miracle is the ability, even in that darkness, to say, I'm going to take a step, even a small step forward. That's a miracle. That's an event worth noticing. The pause to say, I don't have to live and remain in this darkness, is in and of itself a miracle. That willingness to see a half measure, a step in the right direction, a moment of reprieve, and to feel oneself in the presence of the divine there, not as an objective, unmistakable reality, but as a subjective, elective experience. I don't have to remain in this place of darkness. I can imagine for myself a little bit of light. That is miraculous. The Jews gifted us with this capacity to choose miracle in the midst of morass, to discern a whiff of otherworldliness or eightness in the grit of our everyday lives. Hanukkah on this read is thus not a rebuffing of darkness or a refusal to see it. It is instead a deep acknowledgement of it. The holiday actually marks the lack of an irrefutable miracle and the willingness to say anyway, right, despite the lack of a miracle, Nes Gadol Haya Po, a great miracle happened here. What an uplifting text. What a remarkably optimistic, religious text to say, even in the place where I don't feel light, I'm going to experience light. I'm going to imagine for myself light. I'm going to banish for a moment darkness. What are your thoughts on this?
I am just in awe of this. Can you just tell us who wrote that?
So this, yeah,
Oh.
again, so
Oh,
this,
Rabbi
the
Vogler?
original text was Sfat Emet, and the interpretation of the text is
Was
Rabbi
Rabbi
Smokler.
Smokler. Yeah, okay. I just love that interpretation. That's just, that's beautiful. That's just amazing.
Yes, which is why I so needed to share it with you, because I agree with you. Ellen.
Gosh, that really takes me back to the very beginning of the lockdown last March of what, 2019, 20? Because I had to make myself do something. I set some tiny goal that I could say, I actually did something. Every single day that I was terrified if I did something, I would bring disease into my home. So it's just, it's hard to remember how terrifying those first months really were when we knew nothing. And I truly, like one day I said, I'm going to cut my cat's claws. I'm going to trim their claws. And I had 3. I said, I'm going to do all 3 in one. Well, I couldn't get all 3 in one day, but I did get them. So to set small goals, to say I accomplished something, was critical to my survival of that fear, that deep fear.
Thank you. Thank you. Other thoughts? I think in many ways, these passages take us to the pandemic. They can take us to the political divide in our country right now, the lack of civility that we're experiencing here and all over the world, in every country. The fear of, the Omicron variant and whatever variant is coming forward. How do we approach living our lives? Do we approach it in abject terror, where we remain stuck, unable to live? Or do we approach it with, even though there's not the large miracle, I'm going to create the miracle by taking a step, by moving forward, by finding a means by which I can experience otherworldliness in the face of the darkness of this world. So the Sukkotchever Rebbe writes, the days of Hanukkah are different from all the other sanctified times, for during all other times, all the forces of darkness disappear. All judgment passes from them. But the days of Hanukkah are regular days, chol, right? There's no special, like Sukkot or Passover or Shabbat, where work is permitted and external forces do not disappear. Rather, rays of heavenly light break through and penetrate by way of the screens or coverings of everyday life. For this reason, the mitzvah of lighting candles endured for generations, even in exile, something we have not found with any other temple-based mitzvah. It has lasted for generations outside the temple because the darkness of the exile cannot hide it or darken it. So what he's adding here is something really important. He's suggesting that there's something incredibly powerful when each one of us lights the Hanukkah candles. That it's not just to remember the miracle that happened so many years ago. What is it really about when we light that Chanukiah each night? What is it that we are physically and spiritually and emotionally doing in lighting the Chanukiah each night? What is it we're trying to achieve according to Rabbi Bornstein? Yeah, George.
Well, you're talking internal, but the fact that we increase the number of candles, according to Rabbi Hillel, we are increasing the light to break through the darkness every day. Versus Shammai wanted to go from 8 to 1, we're going higher in our mitzvot here.
Great. Thank you, George. That's really important. So that every night we add a candle, what we're doing is we are demonstrating our ability to take another step forward out of darkness into light. We are demonstrating by lighting the candle that we're not banishing the darkness that exists. The darkness is there. It's real. But we're saying we have some matter of control over that darkness. We can be the light. We can increase the light through our small actions. Ruthann, Ellen, and Leora. Ruthann, make sure you unmute yourself.
We're taking the lightness within us and doing an action of lighting the candle, and then that from us to the candle to the rest of the world. We put it in the window.
Great. So the light within us is the faith that we have in ourselves to light the Chanukiah, to publicize it, to say we can be that source of light in the dark world. Nice. Ellen.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, that when we're lighting the candle, we're actually reminding ourselves of the light inside, and that helps us, to bring it to life and let it grow.
Exactly. Going back to the very top part, even in concealment, within a concealment, the Lord is certainly there. But, we have to reveal that, and we do that, as Ellen said, by lighting that first candle. Imagine if if this becomes our meditation every time we light the Chanukiah. Each time we light a candle, we are saying to ourselves, we are contributing, we are bringing the light within out, and we are then figuring out a way in which we can take that light and somehow change the darkness that exists, even if it's a matter of, wishing somebody a Chag Sameach, smiling to another person. It could be the smallest of acts chesed, like in as Ellen said, cutting the claws of her cat. Or I heard a drash the other day from a woman who, lives alone and lived alone during the whole of the pandemic, and said, at some point it got overwhelming, and just walking outside around her block, reminding her that she was part of all of humanity, was such an important step for her to be able to overcome that darkness. Leora and then Lauren.
I just wanted to say that for me, lighting the Chanukiah is really bringing hope into my heart, because it is very dark, and now with the pandemic, things are kind of scary. But bringing the light in me is bringing me hope.
Nice. It's no surprise, is it, that the holiday of Hanukkah happens during the winter solstice, when the days are the shortest and the darkness is the longest, as a figurative way of trying to be able to see that reflection sometimes in moments in our own lives. Lauren and then Jill.
I mean, my favorite thing is when you turn off all the lights in the kitchen and you just see the candles glowing from the Hanukkah. That just brings me back to my childhood. But I get that same kind of feeling when we light the Shabbat candles, that light from within. You light them when it's dark. And I got that same kind of feeling when we lit the Yizkor candles for our parents. And it's very, I just felt my parents' souls, my in-laws' souls with the Yizkor candles, and we would shut off the lights in the kitchen and you just would see the Yizkor candles glowing. There's something very, I don't know if it's magical or spiritual about religious candles as opposed to the candles on a birthday cake. There's a different feeling about the Hanukkah, the Shabbat candles, the Yizkor candles that I don't get from, singing happy birthday to somebody. And it's a different feeling that comes from
I think
within me.
many of us resonate with that, Lauren. There's actually a statement in the Talmud that says that the Hanukkah candles are not supposed to be used to read by or to see by.
Yeah.
The only purpose of the Hanukkah candles is to enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
So you remind us of that in your comments. Who was now? Jill, and then Ruth Ann, and then Marilyn, and then Rachel.
Rachel, you came. Anyway, I was going to just say that I want to take it a step back to where you made the comment about it's not a mistake that it happens during the winter solstice. And I just think it's interesting that all religions seem to have done the same thing. You have Kwanzaa with lights, you have the Advent candles in Christianity, you have, I'm missing one. What's the other major religion that uses light at this time? I'm missing it, but all of the religions have put light in at this time, I think for the purpose of that, to remind us that in darkness, we need to bring out the light.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ruth Ann. You gotta unmute. Still muted.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm just noticing this now. I hadn't thought about it before, but with Shabbat, you're bringing in the light. Bringing in the light from God. And then in Hanukkah, when you put the menorah in the window, you're going out. You're reaching out. So I don't know.
Nice. So you're bringing the light into Shabbat in order to increase what it is that your soul is feeling around the experience of Shabbat. But on Hanukkah, the mission is to extend that soul outwards, God's light out into the world, to remind others of the potential of light that exists in darkness. Yeah. Nice. Rachel. And then Carrie. And then Marilyn.
Thanks, Rabbi. So I just was thinking I wanted to share this after Lauren had spoken, because as one newer to, acknowledging and getting to observe these beautiful traditions, I can totally echo what she was saying. Oops, sorry, messing up my screen. What she was saying about just like there's something special with the lights, right, of Shabbat and the Hanukkah light that's so different. And I agree, because I absolutely feel like here and even the Yizkor light candle, because I know when I lit one for my mom earlier in the year, there's just something powerful. And, I have like Yankee candles, right? Like that's obviously a thing. And yet that doesn't have anything similar to it. So yeah, I totally resonated with that. And I love what was just said about in the window versus like bringing in Shabbat light versus putting the window of the Hanukkah light to give light out, because it makes me think of the class that I'm in, Adult B'nai Mitzvah, when Rabbi Vogel was talking about Hanukkah and like shared about that there was that intentionality, that even because the days are shorter, as you just said earlier, Rabbi, and people were coming home, that they'd see that light as they were coming home too in their own windows. And so it's warming. So I loved all of these thoughts kind of coming together and converging.
Thank you. Thank you. Carrie.
So mine is an interesting perspective, because we're talking about all these lights and all these candles. And so my brain went to like when we light candles. And I realized, that sharing of light and all the candles are allowed to burn down, with the exception of Havdalah. So we actually extinguish it. And I thought, well, then why are we extinguishing when that light? And so I'm thinking, well, maybe that particular light is supposed to remind us that it's internal, that we've lit it and we're supposed to keep going until the next week, because that light's supposed to be inside us. And we share that Havdalah candle, right? It's a shared community kind of experience, like the spice box. And so it just made me think of, I love Ruth Ann's thing about sharing it outward, but it sort of bothered me for that instant of we extinguish.
Wow, I never thought about that. That's such an interesting, it's true. It's the only time that we do that. Thank you for that. Wow, what a interesting way of framing that.
Okay.
Last comment, I think it was Marilyn I had called on. Okay,
Yes.
two last comments, Marilyn and then Lauren.
Okay, I was going back to the concept of the 8 days that they were they were working days, that even in the mundane, you can still find this light and emanate the light, as opposed to Shabbat or any other holy days where you are not working, you're not supposed to be preoccupied, but you're working for 8 days. I mean, it's a non-holy day, and you can still find the light and emanate the light.
Very nice. In fact, that's exactly, if you look at the last sentence or the last two sentences of the last comment by Rabbi Smokler, the darkness is not banished as it is on other holidays that step outside of time. Instead, we step into time, into the mundane, into Galut, out of the temple and into day-to-day living. And we welcome the rays of light that manage to shine through the cracks. That's really the spirit and the essence of Hanukkah. So last comment, I called on Lauren. There you are, Lauren.
There I am. So when I was pregnant with my son, Michael, my obstetrician was Arnold Bresky. I don't know if any of you gave birth with Arnold Bresky, but he had said to me, what you want to teach your child is if they have this candle inside of them and they want to make their candle shine bright, and they want to put their energy into making their candle be the brightest in the room. And they could do that by creating their own energy or by blowing out everybody else's candle. So I just wanted to say that. And that's what I used to use with the kids in my class. The idea is you want to put your energy into your own candle, not by making everybody else in the room feel bad by blowing out their own candle.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
that's-
Thank you.
I don't know if Arnold Bresky's still alive. Do you know Judith? Is he still alive? He was crazy. But
All right, everybody. Well, as always, thank you for the wonderful learning. And God willing, we will see all of you together next week as we continue jumping back into the Joseph story with another wonderful Sfat Emet to study together. And I hope everybody has.
Rabbi, can we add one more thing? If anybody
Yeah.
has signed up for Hanukkah.
Thank you. Yes. This Saturday night, this Friday night, first of all, tomorrow night at 4:15, come to the synagogue if you are nearby and available for a candle lighting and then a musical Shabbat service.
oh, okay.
And then on Saturday evening, bring your kids. And there's also a Tot Shabbat for the littlest ones this coming Saturday at 9 o'clock that I am running for the little kids at 9 o'clock outside. And then Saturday night at 5 o'clock, please register today for the wonderful opportunity of the Braid Theater with wine and cheese in advance and dessert afterwards. And
And
an
it's on Zoom.
opportunity- What's that?
And it's on, it's also on Zoom.
It
for
is
somebody who may
also
live
on-
Out of state, Rachel?
Exactly.
Oh, I didn't know it was on Zoom.
It is.
Okay.
It's you can register if you are not in person and be able to watch it online. It won't be recorded, but you will be able to watch it live along with the candle lighting at 6 o'clock. So
Rabbi, can you stay on 1 second to talk to me?
yes, absolutely.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Gary, are you
Shabbat
driving?
Shalom and